He burns a WVU jersey.
Oh, wow.
He says, I'm coming to Welch, and I'm taking all you Welch women, and I'm whooping all you Welch boys' butts. Well, you know, you might get away with saying that about the people from Charleston or Beckley.
Right.
But you're not going to get away with saying that about the people of Welch.
Sure, yeah.
They wanted to kill him.
Right.
Like security had to follow this guy around the whole night.
Welcome to Creepalachia. We're getting into some mine rescue. We're getting into some astrophotography, powerlifting, even a story about Theo Vaughn down the road with the famous Dave Green. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun. So I first met you. It was 6 or 7 years ago when I was working on a project about a guy who got sealed up in a coal mine that was actually underground, stealing copper.
Okay.
And then I was trying to find like mine rescue team member to tell me about this stuff. And then I think that's how we got connected some random way. But go ahead and tell people like a little about your background, what you do for a living, and what you do as a passion.
Okay. Well, there's a lot, I guess. You know, husband, dad of two daughters, which are both grown now. So, you know, having three ladies in the house, I've been completely outnumbered. Even all the animals are girls. So we did have one boy cat, but they neutered him. So I've been, you know, doing that thing. And then I've been a coal miner for 21 years, going on 21 years now. And mine rescue team member for going on 15 years. So yeah, that's paid the bills. I mean that, you know, mine rescue is a passion too. People don't realize, you know, we train and we compete, and it's an insanely competitive atmosphere. I can remember the first competition that I went to. You know, a lot of training that you do in any industry is sort of like, well, let's do this. Let's check the box, and it's done, and it's right, and we got it, and you know, we can document that it was done, and then we just move on. But with mine rescue, man, the guys are super passionate, super competitive. Like they want to win. The companies want to see you win. And I can remember walking out to my first mine rescue competition, having to remind myself to breathe. Like I was so nervous walking out there. So yeah, been doing that. And then, man, I guess hobby wise, I've had about every hobby that, you know, I could get my hands on, and who knows what the future will hold. But, from playing drums, I played drums since I was a kid. And got into photography probably 10 years or so ago, and, really become a passion probably about 5 or so years ago. Whenever I discovered that I could take pictures of outer space, you know, with just a DSLR camera, it was like, that was an eye opener. And I've always been super intrigued by outer space. And so, I can remember the very first picture I took of the Milky Way core, just getting out and putting a camera on a tripod and setting it up on the side of the road. I mean, the foreground was nothing. It was literally just like a tree, a bush, and then the Milky Way core. And it was, you know, everything was terrible about the picture other than I had the Milky Way core in the picture. And, I was just immediately hooked. Like, I'm like, this is the craziest thing. Like that's really up there. I mean, you know, you can see some of that stuff with the naked eye, but the camera picks up details that, you know, our eyes just aren't capable of seeing. And it's all very real. And you see these pictures of stuff, online, but it's very different when you snap the photo and you're looking in the back of the camera and you're seeing this stuff, in outer space, and you're like, wow, dang, man, that's really up there, you know? So,
Your work is incredible.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it.
I'm gonna pull it up here while you're talking about it. Let's see here. So let's find.
That's my
Dave has a camera.
Yeah, that's sort of a profile, a portfolio site, I guess, if you will.
Perfect. Yeah. And sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good, man. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, you're on trips constantly, traveling, doing this stuff. Do you research like, oh, okay, well, I've heard there's some really good photos taken here. I've seen some really good work. Let me go here and see what I can do. How do you decide where to go?
So with astrophotography, dark skies are imperative. So there's dark sky maps you can get online. I mean, if you just Google dark sky map or light pollution map, those resources are out there, super easy to find. The state of West Virginia has some of the darkest skies east of the Mississippi. There's some areas in northern Pennsylvania that's pretty dark. Of course, up into Maine, there's some dark areas. The Outer Banks of North Carolina are relatively dark. But east of the Mississippi, there's just not a lot of dark skies. And if you look at a light pollution map of the United States, east of the Mississippi, the entire East Coast is just lit up, and light pollution is on a Bortle scale. It's like 1 to 9, 9 be in the middle of Las Vegas, 1 be in the middle of the ocean. Okay. And so there's areas of West Virginia that are easily Bortle 2, and very dark skies. So the darker the sky, the more detail you're able to pick up with a camera when you're doing astrophotography. If you go out in the middle of town, even the middle of Beckley or Charleston or somewhere like that, you're not going to be able to take a picture of the Milky Way. You might see some very subtle details in a photo, but nothing like what we're looking at here. And so if you get out away from city lights, basically what happens is city lights just washes out the scene. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so the brighter lights of the city is what you see in the photo instead of the lights from the Milky Way core or whatever you're trying to take a picture of.
Right.
So back to sort of the planning process is I'm looking at these areas that are the darkest, and generally that's where I'm going to try to go to. It would be great, to be able to just go anywhere and take photos of the Milky Way core or whatever, but it's just not possible. And so, the areas up into the Monongahela National Forest, up through Pocahontas County into Pendleton County, all those areas. And, yet none of these photos or images that you're looking at are, for one, none of them are snapshots. None of these are set a camera on a tripod and then, take a picture
mm-hmm.
and go back to the house. The photo you're looking at there is a combination of dozens and dozens of different photos with different light pollution filters. The reds and stuff sort of, even in a dark sky, they don't show up as like the way they are there in that picture without particular light pollution filters.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's sort of a combination of multiple photos to create a final image. With that being said, I always sort of, pride myself on, this is an accurate representation of reality. If our eyeballs could see that as human beings, then you could stand right there where I had the camera and that's what it would look like. But our eyes aren't able to see that much detail in outer space. And so I'm sort of recording, sort of documenting a scene that exists beyond what our own senses are capable of showing us. So.
That's incredible. And Dave has brought in gifts, everyone. Be jealous. Yeah. Where is is this Seneca Rocks?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Seneca Rocks.
So, and then
that's the old, I think they call that the old Sites homestead. The Parks Department sort of keeps it up. It's just sort of
so no one lives there?
No.
I was going to say, say, hey, I'm going to sit in your yard for 6 hours?
Yeah, in the middle of the night, there's some weird guy out in the yard. No, that's actually part of the park there. And so I think the Parks Department just keep it up as sort of a part of the park. So
yeah, it's beautiful. I'm going to I'm putting that in the office. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah, man, for sure.
Awesome. All right. So, and what we're definitely going to touch more on some photography. Let's get into some coal mining, a little bit. So, when did you first decide, like, hey, I'm going to try this coal mining thing out? And did you grow up in Southern West Virginia?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Born and raised. Dad's a coal miner. Grandpas are all coal miner. I mean, I'm a stereotype for sure. Southern West Virginia, coal miner boy. So, you know, I had my oldest daughter Olivia, pretty young, and I guess me and my wife Nikki, I was about maybe 20, I guess. You should remember that, I guess.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it sounds right.
No, I get
about 20. And so, you know, she's about a couple years younger than me. So, man, I had tried my hand at every job you can imagine, from jewelry salesman to shoe salesman to I sold cemetery property door to door. Was the craziest job ever. I helped move mobile homes. I worked fast food. I worked at telemarketing, and just before my daughter was born, I was actually driving over the road, tractor trailer, and I was hauling glass. And so the whole time my wife was pregnant with Olivia, I was driving over the road, so I was gone. And so, you know, my wife goes into labor. I go to the hospital. My daughter's born, and same day my daughter's born, 2304, I call the trucking company and I'm like, I quit. So, because I just didn't want to go back over the road. You know, I was gone 2 weeks at a time. I'd be home a day or so, and then I was back on the road. And I'm like, that's not the dad I want to be. I don't want to be gone all the time. So, additionally, I didn't want to be a jobless dad, which is what I was day one as a dad.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, that's when I took the telemarketing job, and I was just trying to, you know, make a little money. And while I was doing the telemarketing thing, I started taking my 80-hour course, which is what you got to take to even get a job in the mines. And, I got my 80-hour course, and this is back 2004. I mean, you know, the last couple years, the coal industry has been begging for people. I mean, we just hired, you know, just about anybody. But back 2004, it wasn't easy to get a job. And I can remember, you know, begging and pleading, driving back down even after the interview and being like, hey, you going to hire me? Like, I need this job. I got a, you know, brand new baby at home. And eventually they hired me. And, so, you know, I loved it. I mean, I was like I said, 21, I guess, year old kid, basically. And, you know, I didn't realize I was a kid then. I thought I was a man. I was a kid, and went into the coal industry. And within the first year, I was running what they call a continuous miner, which is the machine that actually mines the coal. And it's run with a remote control. And I loved remote control cars when I was a kid. And so it was the biggest, toughest, meanest looking remote control car I had ever seen. And I was getting to run this thing, and they were paying me, you know,
crap ton of money.
Pretty good. Yeah. And so, yeah, I was thrilled and loved it, and did that for, you know, about 6 years. I run a continuous miner, and had the opportunity to join the mine rescue team. Our mine rescue team, with the company I work for, it's like they call it a full-time team, but we're more like safety reps. So we teach classes, and we do safety audits, and we, you know, prepare training material. And of course we have to train in the mine rescue. So we're kind of doing something on the safety side of the industry all the time. So that's more or less what I've been doing for the last 14, 15 years now.
Shoot, yeah. So, yeah, which I was a surface miner. So I know I'm so thankful this job existed for a 2-time college dropout, because I would have been like you. I was doing telemarketing. I worked for a place called Civic Development.
Yeah.
And you know that it's going to get crazy when they go in and say, okay, here's the alcohol pads to clean off your headsets so you don't get ear herpes. And I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then everyone in there trying to be like Wall Street, selling these teddy bears for sick children, and then 10% of it actually goes to the charity.
Sure.
And,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I relate to that so much.
Ear herpes is the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't know firsthand, but it sounds bad.
Yeah. That's what it's like, whoa, what kind of place am I at? But it's just, and there were some good people there, obviously.
Sure.
There was also some tweakers trying trying to get a few bucks,
right.
but it's a good time. But yeah, so, what was your schedule like? Did you have like a variable schedule? Did you work night shift at first and or?
Man, when I first went into the mines, it's like most guys, you go in day one and you have zero skills. I mean, you have nothing to offer but your back. And so, I was working whatever shifts they needed me to work, which kind of varied early on. I'm talking the first few months of my career. It was like I might work day shift for a week or two, and you might work night shift just wherever they sort of need you. You're an apprentice miner. You know what I mean? You're learning. You don't. So whatever, they just sort of shuffle you around. I knew as soon as I saw this piece of equipment, this continuous miner, I was like, immediately, as soon as I saw it running, it's the craziest thing in the world. Like, you're underground and this thing's like carving out new tunnels underground, and you're watching this thing run. It's epic. And so at least it was to me. Most people might say, well, that's just insane. But to me, I was like, that's the coolest piece of equipment I've ever seen in my life. And I knew as soon as I saw it, like, that's what I want to run. I go to the superintendent and I'm like, hey, I know I'm a red hat. I'm nobody. I'm an apprentice miner. I'm like, but I want to run a miner. Like, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. And so they gave me the opportunity after a certain period of time. I've been in the mines. I had the opportunity to run that. So yeah, initially every kind of shift, I was back and forth working. I would double back if I worked day shift and they were like, hey, the miner man's out on evening shift. I'd be like, yes, I'll take it. And so I would double back just so I could run that piece of equipment. Man, loved it, dude. I was like, it's hard work. I've seen countless people that have started day one in the mine and go in right into the mine and be like, nope.
Yeah,
this is not for me, and go right back outside and quit day one. Like, this is not what we're going to do. So I get it, but I don't know. For me, I'm not incredibly brave or anything like that. It just, I don't know. It just seems super cool to me.
Sure.
You're underground, and yeah, I just enjoyed it. And then, so, on the production side of things, when you're running this piece of equipment, you're kind of, you're on a crew, but it's not a typical work environment. You're a team, you're working together. And so there's sort of a team element of running coal and taking care of the guys that you work with. And so, you really build up sort of almost like a family relationship with the guys you work with. And, worked a lot of day shifts, but I've kind of been all over, back to the original question. But, just that whole environment. When I had the opportunity to go into mine rescue originally, I was kind of reluctant to do it because I enjoyed producing coal. I enjoyed running the piece of equipment that I was running. I enjoyed my job. But it was a great move. And now in the long run, I learned more in my first year of mine rescue than I had learned my previous 7 years or whatever in the industry. Like, we go to different mines. You see a lot of different elements that you would never be exposed to at working at one place every day, and so, and even just the mine rescue world, just learned so much about, safety and the history of the mine and what mine rescue does and what elements exist within mining that I just never was aware of.
Sure.
So it's a pretty cool opportunity.
Yeah.
Sure.
I know when I first got it, I felt like I found this infinite money glitch of like, man, I've been struggling. I don't know if this was like this for you, but I felt like this is such a blessing to be able to have this job. I actually felt like I had made it to adulthood in a way. I was like, I'm here. I'm paying my bills. I'm making enough money.
You were a man, bro.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's it.
Exactly.
That's
I felt, and then I was thinking like, I'm going to get fired any day because I'm just not supposed to have this. But eventually, I probably wasn't the best coal miner on the planet, but mine was completely different. I sat in a air conditioned cab, hopefully air conditioned, for 8 to 10 hours an evening.
Right.
And
well, surface mining is a completely different world than underground mining. I mean, it's in terms of the work that you do day to day. I mean, now being in safety, you know, I work with surface miners, which is cool. You know, we train surface miners. I mean, I couldn't train them on the work that they do day to day, but just, you know, I do a lot of like first aid training and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm on these sites and I see some of the work they do, and it is definitely a completely different environment for sure.
Completely different body type too. Let's just say that. I mean, it's a little more actively involved underground and above ground. There's a lot of sitting around, a lot of smoking cigarettes, a lot of dipping, you know, Zen or whatever. And hey, no offense, that's just that it is what it is.
Bro, you said it, I did. Come on, put that on the record.
That's great.
I don't want to get beat up by a bunch of surface miners next week.
I know. Totally hold me accountable. They know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
Now some of it, you know, we would have this whole, if you were doing fitness, it was like, and we can get into that too with CrossFit Cole.
Sure, yeah.
A lot of them, you know, some of them did yoga. Some of them had certain, you know, routines that they would do.
Right.
But on the job, it was like real. I mean, you were burning like 5 calories of shit. Like it wasn't, it was not
an active job.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Like the life of an underground coal miner. I know, like, were you stopping at gas stations buying like 3 Slim Jims a night, and you know, or was it gas station lunch, or did you try to actively take care of your nutrition like you all do now?
You know, man, I never darkened the doorway of a gym until I was about probably 28 or 9, I guess. Never had a barbell in my hand. Like, I didn't work out. And I wasn't even thinking about fitness when I worked underground. I mean, that just wasn't on my radar. It wasn't something that I was involved in at all. It was actually when I went into mine rescue, a guy I was on the team with then, Preacher Brown, shout out. This guy is 6'2", 300 pounds with abs. I mean, he's a monster of a man. And he was in the gym all the time. And I just started working out with him, man. And he was hugely influential. And yeah, man, it just took off from there as far as the fitness side of things. But yeah, working underground, man, I mean, that was back in the day. My kids were little, and it was a typical, my wife was packing me a lunch and in a bag, and it was probably a ham sandwich and whatever,
Vienna
Nutty Buddy or something. Yeah, Vienna sausages, whatever was in the bucket or in the bag is what I was going to eat that day. So, yeah, I mean, you look at it from an active it is even though I was running a piece of equipment underground, you're running it with a remote control, and yes, the actual running of the piece of equipment, the operating of the machine is not very active, but, you're still, that piece of machinery has to move back and forth. And so you're hanging cables, you're dragging stuff. It was significantly more physical than what I had even realized then, because when I left that job and went into safety, it's not physical at all. I mean, we're going underground and doing audits, but we just wasn't like physically laboring for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. and I started putting on weight, and we were on the road a lot. And so I was eating, Tudor's Biscuit World for breakfast, and I started putting on, and that's really when I was like, man, something's got to give. And that's when I started getting in the gym and actually working out, because I was like, man, I'm falling apart. But then, that sort of become a passion too, is getting in the gym and working out and lifting weights. And yeah.
How did CrossFit Cole begin? And for the audio crowd, he's got a CrossFit Cole shirt on, and you were, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were instrumental in kind of getting that off the ground. Is that right? Or in the early days? Or?
No, not necessarily. I was there for the early days. Like I was there in 2015 for CrossFit Cole's grand opening. Chip Williams is the owner of CrossFit Cole, and a great guy. I hate that that's recorded that I said that, because he'll use that against me later. But he's done a fantastic job with that. I mean, it's a community within itself. Going back to talking about community, but that's kind of always been the theme of that place. Mm-hmm. And I started working out there early on, but then eventually, became a coach there, and it's a huge part of my life now. I mean, my kids grew up in there. They're like the people there are my family. I mean, they're no less. I mean, both of my girls, Olivia and Isabella, is my youngest daughter. They both had barbells in their hands since they were 9 or 10 years old, and now they're both collegiate throwers. Like they're
your whole family could like pick up minivans and just chuck them across the yard.
I don't know. But I mean, it just that was a huge thing. When I first started going to CrossFit Cole, I was boxing, and I had a short stint of my little boxing career, and did some Toughmans and the rough and rowdy fights. And
which you won one, or did you win? How many did you win?
I won a couple. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I didn't realize that when I posted about you.
Did a handful of amateur fights, and so I wasn't like. That's sort of part of the reason why initially I wasn't like going to CrossFit Cole all the time, because I was still training in boxing. And I fought for a few years. I actually fought one professional fight, and I won it. And so I'm an undefeated professional pro boxer.
Heck yeah.
1-0. But
was it a knockout?
It was, yeah.
Really?
And I was having some trouble with my eyes, and I had to give it up. And it's probably best that I did. I'd probably be, keep doing it, and at this point I'll be slurring my speech.
Yeah. I took a few kickboxing classes, and I started having headaches, and I was like, this probably ain't smart for me to just go and wail on each other's heads.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a whole lot of brain cells to spare anyway. So it's probably best that but no, I loved it, man. I had some great friends, some great people that were connections back in my short boxing stint, but it was, I had a lot of fun with it, man. It was an interesting era.
What was the first tournament like? Because were you nervous? Were you like, because I mean, you're a big dude, you can handle yourself, but even still, I would think it would be a little nerve wracking. Your heart's kind of racing, like, man, there's a lot of people here,
Dude, I can't even describe how nervous I would get. I would literally, I mean, I was, early 30s when I started doing that. And I'm working, I've got 2 daughters, you know what I mean? I have no reason to do this, essentially. And I can remember walking out to the ring and being like, I should just go home. I don't even have a reason. I have no reason to do this. I don't really have anything to prove. I don't even know why I'm here. Like, right. And it never was like the fear of getting punched or getting hurt or anything. It was just like, I think it really boils down to the fear of being humiliated. You know what I mean? You want to go out there and, if you put up a good fight and you lose or whatever, it's like you can go home with that and not feel too bad. But you don't want to go out there and just get
one of those stories.
Yeah. You don't want to be on somebody else's highlight reel. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so, super nervous. I mean, insanely nervous, but man, I don't know. I get nervous. I mean, I've done so much, from mine rescue competition to you mentioned powerlifting, which I'm no powerlifter by no far stretch, but I have done a couple powerlifting competitions, to CrossFit competitions, to, the Toughmans and all this stuff. And, I've always get super nervous. Like you would think like you expose yourself to all this stuff and you just like, I'm nervous coming on here today. Like, I'm just like,
sure.
But you just like, well, it is what it is, man. You roll with the punches, no pun intended. But,
yeah. That's a good way of saying it. Like, cause once you get in like a boxing match, the punches, it's not really that big a deal. Now, sometimes, if you get caught, it's like, whoa, that's different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not like what you would think it would be.
Right.
Once you're in there.
Yeah. Well, I had this old trainer back in the day, Carl Murdoch, great guy, out of Mount Hope. He's an old coal miner and he trains Toughman fighters. Fantastic guy. Truly has a heart of gold, but on the surface is as rough as a cob. And, he would tell me, he'd say, you ain't got a bit of talent, Dave. You can't throw punches. You don't move your head. He'd say, but dang it, you can take a beating. I'm like, well, I guess there's something, but I would be in the fight, man. And I would come out of the ring. I'd be like, man, Carl, that guy never even hit me. And he'd say, Dave, that guy hit you a lot. And I guess you're just so keyed up, man. You're just out there. I'm just like going, man. I'm like, yeah, dude, and I'd come out and think, man, that guy never even touched me. And meanwhile, my nose is bleeding. I'm like, apparently, I guess he did.
Adrenaline flow. And you're just like, oh, I would imagine. Did you win your first one?
I got runner up. I fought the Rough and Rowdy in Summersville. And I can't, it's probably 2013, 14, something like that. Fought in Summersville, got runner up. And I fought a handful of amateur fights here and there, and I won all my amateur fights. The next time I fought was in Welch at the Rough and Rowdy in Welch, which is the story all in and of itself.
I'd love to hear it. Is this when Barstool took over?
No, this is before Barstool. So this was back in the day. And, so the guy the promoter of Rough and Rowdy then, his name is Chris. He started this is back again. This is 2012, 13, 14. He was going to like local gas stations in like Boone County or in McDowell County. And he's going to these gas stations and he's calling up these fighters, these guys that have signed up. And you just have to know there's some characters, yeah. Dude. Like I couldn't exaggerate the guys that are fighting in some of these events. He would call these guys up and he'd be like, hey man, this other guy that's signed up for this fight, he's been talking trash about you and saying that, all the guys from Boone County are a blah, blah, blah,
yeah.
Fill in the blank. So he would get these guys to meet him at a gas station and these guys would be just jacked up, bro. I mean, they was like, some of them would have like chainsaws and they're like, oh, you boys from McDowell County. And they would just be like fired up. So this Welch Rough and Rowdy was no different. Okay. So they had got this guy from Kentucky and his ring name was Big Kentucky. Okay. So he's coming to Welch. Well, I guess Chris had got this guy and he told him, these Welch boys are ready to whoop you or whatever the case may be. So he gets this guy, makes this video and he's saying, I'm coming to Welch from Kentucky. He burns a WVU jersey.
Oh, wow.
He says, I'm coming to Welch and I'm taking all you Welch women and I'm whooping all you Welch boys' butts. Well, you might get away with saying that about the people from Charleston or Beckley.
Right.
But you're not going to get away with saying that about the people of Welch.
Sure, yeah.
They wanted to kill him.
Right.
Like security had to follow this guy around the whole night. Well, so I end up fighting like every previous winner, every previous runner up. I'm fighting for 2 nights in a row. I'm fighting I'm beat to death by the time I get to the championship fight. They give this guy Big Kentucky a cakewalk. They give him because they want him in the championship fight. I mean, this is the hype, bro. I mean, you know what I mean? What do they say? No publicity is bad publicity. But they freaking hated this dude. And if I would have carried a shotgun into the ring and shot this guy in the ring, they would have gave me the keys to Welch, son. They wanted him dead. I mean, there was people coming up to me when they realized that me and him had to fight the championship fight. They're like, dude, you gotta kill this dude. And so we get in the ring. First thing, bell rings. This kid breaks my nose. Okay. Oh, no. Blood's pouring and he's just throwing haymakers. He's real tall and long. He's beating me to death, man. Okay. And this is round 1. And I'm like, I'm giving it all I got, but it's a 1 minute round. So it's 1 minute of basically throwing haymakers and let the chips fall where they may. Right at the end of the round, I basically get lucky and punch this kid right in the diaphragm. I mean, I come from the ground. It was like the nose is bleeding, bro. I'm dying. I'm losing. I'm like, this is everything I got. I come from the ground and I hit this kid in the diaphragm and he just melts into the ring.
Oh, wow.
Bro, they were putting the jacket on me. They were giving me the check. This kid's still laying in the ring. Like, they're just like, kids came up and hugged me, bro. Grandmas kissed me. They were like, thank you for what you did for the city of Welch. And I'm thinking, bro, I was just trying to survive out there. But yeah, for sure. I've got
what does that
wild tales,
like,
bro?
When you threw that punch, could you hear the crowd or did you hear nothing and all of a sudden it just went
bro?
Like, what was that like?
I was just happy to survive, man. I mean, I said earlier that sometimes I would get out of the ring and think that the guy had never punched me. I knew that guy punched me like that. Right. I mean, it was out of the gate. My nose, blood was pouring down my chin. And, yeah, I mean, I was just happy to survive, man. I mean, I was just like, it was win, lose, or draw. Like I said before, I just didn't want to get humiliated out there. And he was humiliating me. I mean, he was kicking my butt, man.
Right. Man, I wish, is that on video somewhere?
Oh, man.
I have to try and look
probably
it
is, but that's old stuff right there. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. How cool. All right. So let's talk before we get into mind rescue specifically. Can you kind of describe, we got a lot of viewers from like out of state, out of country, some of them. What is the process of coal mining where you worked? Like describe the environment of a coal mine for someone who may not know.
Well, it varies quite a bit in terms of conditions. You're talking underground mining. Coal mining specifically is really unique, even in the underground mining realm. Underground coal mining, most of what's done in the state of West Virginia is what they call room and pillar mining. What you're looking at there is some longwall mines, and that's still done in some mines. But essentially, you're taking a machine and you're digging tunnels underground. The seam sort of lays flat underground. Mm-hmm. Coal lies in seams. It doesn't lie in veins. So it's like this blanket of coal that may be 30 inches thick. It could be several feet or more thick. And you're taking this machine and you're mining these tunnels. These tunnels are, approximately 18 to 20 feet wide. And, it could be as low as, you're crawling and the top is just above, you can't even get on your knees without bending your head over. I mean, it could be just a few feet high, or it could be, I've been in mines that were 10, 12 feet high. So in terms of height goes, it varies significantly, but they mine these tunnels, and then they mine, tunnels parallel. So basically what you're left with is exactly what you're looking at, that coal pillars, which are just blocks, and those blocks remain there to keep the top up. That's what supports the top. So the tunnels are mined, you're sort of like it's almost like a tic-tac-toe, I guess, if you will. And then you're left with these coal pillars that essentially hold the blocks up. And so that is on your advance. So you advance, you mine these tunnels, and then on what they call a retreat, which is just what it sounds like, you're mining in reverse, they will actually cut these pillars out. And it's very systematic. You'll set timbers and jacks, and you got all this stuff in place, and you cut these pillars out, and then the roof actually falls in where those pillars were.
Have you been there when it falls?
Oh, many times. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah. So what's that like?
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's exciting. I mean, a lot of what I was around was we used timbers. Which I've been around what they call MRS, which is mobile roof supports. They're just essentially big, gigantic hydraulic jacks. The timbers, though, if you're pillaring using pillaring is what they call removal of the timber or the pillars. They set these timbers in there, and so it looks like almost like a forest. You're looking out through there, and you got all these timbers set. And because it's not like you remove one block and then it falls on right there, that can happen, but more often you'll remove a series of those pillars, remove a series of those blocks out, and then a larger portion will fall. So you can imagine you're looking out through there and it's just this open area with all these timbers set. Well, the timbers aren't set there to hold the top up. The timbers are set there to warn the miners that the top's getting ready to fall. So what happens is, as the weight begins to settle in on these timbers, the timbers will start to pop and crack and make all these noises. And when that starts happening, look out, Dad.
Yeah.
It's about to hit the ground. So, when it's getting ready to fall, you're looking up through there and these timbers are popping and cracking and they're pow, pow, pow. And, and then it just whoo, hits the ground. I mean, huge, whoosh of air.
I was going to say,
it's pretty incredible. Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
So, how loud is it? Like, do you wear earplugs, or are you kind of like, well, okay.
It's not so much loud as it is like pressure. Cause you got to imagine, you're in the tunnel. So it's not like an open air. All that pressure from the roof fall just moves over you. So it'll, if it's large enough, it can actually blow you over. I mean, I've never actually seen that happen, but it happens. I mean, people's been injured from large, even controlled roof falls. But generally speaking, it just falls and you feel this huge gust of air that blows over you.
Do your ears pop?
A little bit.
Yeah,
because it's definitely a change in pressure. Yeah, it's a significant change in pressure. I always liked pillaring. It was just exciting.
Sure.
Yeah. So
it sounds awesome.
Your viewers are going to be completely convinced that I'm nuts by the end of this.
No, this is great. This is great. I think that's the general consensus.
Is that I'm nuts.
Well, other than that. And it's a good nuts.
I guess.
That sounds bad. All right. So after you mine, explain what roof bolting is for somebody who that's to pin the top to keep it from falling. Is that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, I mean, you can imagine a machine goes in there and mines this tunnel out. Well, then you're left with this void. Okay. And before anybody can go in there and do anything else, once it's mined, the first piece of equipment in it is the roof bolter. And that machine goes in there and it puts what are essentially rods of rebar in the top. And I won't go into the science of it because I'll sound like an idiot, but it either suspends the roof there or it binds it together and sort of creates a bridge. But yeah, before anybody's able to go in there and work or do anything else, these rebar rods with some sort of a glue or resin, or I mean, there's a lot of different roof bolting techniques that are used, but that's sort of the most common is sort of your rebar rod bolts and resin glue that holds the bolts up.
Right. And kind of explain to people, people who aren't familiar with coal mining in general, they may not realize actually the amount of engineering that goes into planning these things.
Oh yeah.
Like the people behind the scenes, kind of describe some of these people that you've met over the years and how, the classic stereotype of a coal miner is actually completely wrong. Because I know for me, driving a coal truck is probably one of the hardest things on this planet you could ever do. So I like to kind of describe that when I have a chance to. But how much planning goes into this with these companies?
Well, I mean, there's a lot more support staff that are involved in mining than I realized, especially, back when I was running a continuous miner. I went to work, walked in the bathhouse, put my boots on, went underground, run a continuous miner, come outside, showered, and went home. That's what I saw, but being in mine rescue, we're involved with, people from, your environmental groups to your engineering department, your safety department. It takes a lot more people to mine a lump of coal than the guy mining the lump of coal. And, that was sort of, my feeling on it back when I was running a continuous miner. But there's a ton of planning, and mines in West Virginia. If you look at a mine map from West Virginia, it looks significantly different than a mine map, say, from Pennsylvania. And that's because a lot of our mines here are, the seams run along ridges. And so, if you could imagine looking down on top of a ridge. Well, that ridge runs, down this way, and then there's ridges that sort of run off of it. Well, those coal seams run in those directions of those ridges. And so in engineering the mines, you got to imagine that the mine advances in all those directions to try to, get all that coal from all those different areas. A lot of areas, if you look at a mine from out west or up north in Pennsylvania or somewhere like that, that a lot of those mines are, and maybe I should go over this a little bit, but sure, shaft or slope, which just means that they bore straight down. And so the seam doesn't run along a ridge. It's just underground. And so it just kind of advances in every direction, but most of the mines in West Virginia are what they call a drift mine. Okay. So a drift is just like, if you can imagine a hillside, and then you punch a hole right in the side of the hillside. And everybody's been driving down, the highway in West Virginia or anywhere really in Appalachia, and seeing, you look up the side of the interstate or somewhere, and there's this big high wall, this big rock wall, and you see all these layers of strata. Well, if you look, typically some of those layers are coal, and you'll see that black layer. Well, a drift mine is like if you just stepped off the side of the highway and that seam of coal was at the bottom level and you just went right in. That's a drift mine. Where a slope mine is, or a shaft mine is, you drill a shaft straight down into the ground until you hit coal, and then you mine out from those directions. But most of the mines in West Virginia are drift mine, just because of the layout of the land and the way the coal lies in our hills.
Sure. Yeah. And two, there's a lot of really good companies out there that do what they can to protect the environment too. I mean, there's there's reclamation plans, and they take these things into account. Most of the issues we're seeing are from mines, back in the early 1900s, where we didn't really know a lot. Mm-hmm. So, kind of speak on that too. Like, sometimes it gets a bad name, and I think that, it's always more gray than we think. Like, these companies actually are trying. Of course, they want to be profitable. Yeah. But the majority of them are trying to do the right thing too for the environment.
Yeah. Well, I'm not, I don't work on the environment. I mean, you got a whole department a whole side of every company that is an environmental portion of the company that, they go out and they test water, and they maintain ponds. The mine produces water. I mean, naturally you have to keep water out of certain areas where men are working and traveling. And so, there's water coming out of the mine. Well, what do we do with that water? You can't just dump it into the creek necessarily unless it's, clean enough to go into the creek. And so, I'm not an expert on that, and whatever I said on that would just sound
sure.
dumb. So, but in terms of, environmental protections, I mean, I work for Alpha, and I know we go as far as we even have like trash pickup day from time to time. And I know that's maybe not on a large scale. That might not mean anything to people, but to the communities where we're at, this is just, we're not even getting paid. This is just volunteer. And we'll have hundreds of volunteers out. We'll go into a community where we have mines at, and we'll just pick up all the trash off. I mean, I'm not talking we're picking up cans, dude. We're picking up everything that's on the side of the road, from couches. We've picked up toilets. Like,
wow.
Yeah. Like we got big trucks out there. We're picking up every bit of trash that we can lay our hands and eyes on. If we can pick it up and get it in a truck, we're cleaning it up. And so I've been involved with that several times, and that's super cool. Most of the people that work these mines live in these communities. So, they fish these creeks, they hunt these hills. They don't want the mine to destroy the environment that they live in. And so, it's important to the employees, for sure. And so, I definitely have seen, if you go into the history of mining, and there just wasn't any laws in place, and maybe knowledge of what things we were damaging as an industry in the past. And so,
we used to work like 12-year-olds, like, okay, grab the donkey, head
right.
under, Yeah, we just did a 4-hour episode on the Mine Wars, where we talk about stuff like that. So
I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that loves the outdoors as much as I do. I mean, I love getting out in the hills, and obviously, landscape photography is my passion,
which is awesome.
And I want to see, the areas that we play in protected.
Sure.
But there's still areas that we work in. I think that the thing that people don't realize, surface mining on the surface, if you will, no pun intended,
right?
It is ugly, I guess. And people see that, and you can drive down our interstates and you can see surface mines, and people are pretty critical of the way that looks. And I understand that, but they also don't understand some of the reclaim process and what that same area is going to look like 50 years from now.
Sure.
I mean, not only does that land become more usable in the long term, there's areas where you can travel to that were previously surface mined. And if I told you that was a mine at one time, you wouldn't believe me, because there's trees, there's animals, the creeks are clean. Like, the reclaim process was right.
Yeah. I went to school on a surface mine.
Right. Yeah,
surface
I know.
mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and that's a beautiful area, but again, it does take, proactive steps to see that that's being done. I've said this 100 times, that today's surface mines is tomorrow's state parks.
Sure.
Like, we'll see that in 100 years, today's surface mines will be some of the most beautiful areas in the state. I mean, you look at you look at like the scenic highway, you look at Dolly Sods, those are some of the most beautiful areas in our state right now. And part of the reason that they look the way they look is because of what people have done in the past. But that land has healed, and it's just come back and flourished. I mean, Dolly Sods, for instance, I mean, people come from all over the world. I mean, that's considered the crowning jewel of the Monongahela National Forest. Well, that place burned. They forested it so hard that that it was just desolate, and it was like it burned, and they've done World War II training on it. I mean, bombs have been dropped on it. You will not find a more beautiful place, I'm convinced, in the world than Dolly Sods. That place is incredible. But the land, it healed. And I'm giving a pass to destroying any area, but
Oh, no, yeah.
I'm sort of, you're looking at this thing on the short term and the long term.
Yep.
I want to see people work, but also additionally, I want to see, the land protected and where we do mine, we're keeping families fed, and, I want to see us go back in those areas and reclaim them and see them. I honestly see them better than they were when we got there.
Yeah.
And I think that's possible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's a way to do it responsibly for sure. Very few companies, are doing the wrong thing for sure. All right. So let's talk about mine rescue. I talked to you again. I did a project on UBB. Yeah. And kind of went back and forth with you about mine rescue and the process. And you can listen to that if you're listening to this, you want to listen to it. It's called UBB, A Coal Miner Story, and it's on upperbigbranch.com, bunch of podcast outlets. But explain to people kind of, why mine rescue teams were invented and what they provide in disastrous situations, which unfortunately do occur. It seems like they're less and less these days, but they still occur. So right. How important is mine rescue to coal mining?
Well, in times past, mine rescue teams were going out to mine fires and mine explosions. If you look back into the history of mining back, in the 20s, 30s, 40s, in the state of West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Virginia, Kentucky, there was mine disasters every month. There was miners dying underground every month. And so, the first national mine rescue competition, I don't know when mine rescue teams actually began, but the first national mine rescue competition, which tells me teams had already been around for some point in time, would have been 1911.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, these teams have been around doing this for a while. But it's obviously, it's a lot different these days. We're not dealing with mine fires every day. We're not dealing with, mine explosions every day. Fortunately, it's something that's rarely dealt with. And so, for me personally, and like our team and our company, a lot of what we do is we'll call it preventative maintenance. We're going in and we're doing audits, and we're seeing that things are right, and we're training guys on emergency protocol. If you do have something, even, it doesn't have to be an explosion, but it could be a roof fall or a fire, or whatever the case may be. What do we do from there? What's in place? And so, the teams are there that if something happens and somebody's, trapped in a mine, or, some people decide to go spelunking into an abandoned coal mine and get lost.
And don't do that. Okay.
Then, we have been in there in the past to go in and find them and bring them out. And, but, on a normal day to day, we're just not dealing with those. So we train and we go through, mock disasters to try to see that we're as ready as possible. But man, in times past, if you were a mine rescue team member, you're probably going into a burning coal mines once a month. And so, it's not the case these days. You might say I'm sort of, for you old enough to remember this, the Maytag men of, first response.
Oh, nice.
So, there's not a lot to respond to. So we're doing a lot of other work these days.
When explosions do occur, how do they occur? There's a couple different ways, right? Typically.
Yep. Typically, just speaking historically here, if you're going back, looking at mine explosions that have happened, in mining for the last 100 years or longer, methane is emitted from the coal bed. Methane is an explosive gas, and typically methane will ignite initially from some ignition source, whatever it might be. I mean, there are ignition sources within the mine. I mean, and so methane could ignite, and then what happens is the coal dust, specifically, not so much the coal, but the coal, it's being ground up. So there's a lot of coal dust that actually exists within the mine. What happens is that initial methane explosion will cause, from the concussion of the explosion, will cause the coal dust to be suspended in the air, which then causes the methane explosion to propagate or be carried throughout the mine. I mean, that is the typical story of just a general mine explosion and how it happens.
Sure.
And of course, these days there's a lot to be done to mitigate the potential of that happening. We cover everything in what it's essentially rock dust, and that's what we call it, is rock dust. Well, rock dust is, it's non-explosive, non-combustible, and so we cover everything with rock dust continually. That's a continuous process to ensure that there's not coal dust, that's settled on the ground that could potentially be suspended in the air.
Yeah, and the rock dust is typically white, so you'll be able to see it. It's like a heavy blanket on the coal dust.
Right. You might be going into a coal mine thinking you're going to see, this very black area, but it's all been covered in rock dust. So your mines that you go into underground are all going to be white. The top, the roof, the floor, the walls, or what we call the ribs, are all covered in rock dust. And that's a picture there of a guy with a rock dust. He's blowing rock dust on everything. It's applied in different ways. I mean, it might be just a guy with a bag in his hand throwing it on the ground, but it also might be some sort of machine, or even something larger than that blows this rock dust in the mines to keep it from the coal dust from building up. And then, of course, with the methane, that's a ventilation issue. So you keep everything ventilated, and that's you go back in history, why were these mines being, why were they blowing up in the 1920s and 1930s and 1940s? Well, they didn't have sufficient ventilation. They didn't rock dust. None of these measures that are in place today to keep miners safe, they just weren't in place.
Yeah. So, and we can talk about ventilation for a second. So to mitigate the methane and to lower the quantity in the air, they have a fan that essentially blows in, and then a fan that pulls it out. Is that right? Like a return, and then
you usually just have one fan.
Okay.
I mean, that could be true. It's just in a larger mine. But a lot of times your smaller mines, they'll just have one fan, and you could either have a blowing fan that literally, it is just what it sounds like, blows air into the mine, or you could have an exhausting fan on the return side of the ventilation system that pulls air through the mine.
Right. And then you have mine curtain, which creates the direction for the path.
That's exactly right. There's walls, what we call stoppings, but there's walls built underground. If you think about all these tunnels, well, if you don't build some sort of controls in there, the air just goes everywhere. So we build up walls. Going back to the engineering, I mean, this is a ventilation system in a coal mine is very complicated. And so, these walls are put in place, or controls are put in place to move air where you need it and want it, to keep methane from building up.
Mm-hmm.
And it also reduces, coal dust and stuff too.
Sure. What year did you say you started mine rescue?
I started mine rescue in 2010, late 2010.
So it was after UBB?
Right.
Okay. So, and for those who don't know, Upper Big Branch was an explosion that killed 29 miners in April of 2010. So what are some protocols involved? Like, for instance, if something happens, or is there any certain events that you've went to that you can kind of talk about that stick out in your mind, or of kind of the protocols, how you all assess a situation? Talking about like the respirator, if you use one, or the, what's that you put on your back? Your apparatus. Yeah. Which has 4 hours of
about that. Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah. So we use a breathing apparatus. And it's like a closed circuit. And so basically you're rebreathing the same air, but there's a small oxygen tank, which, without going into all of it, but it administers a small amount of oxygen to keep your breathing level up to about 20.8, which is what ambient air is. anyways, I'm sure nobody cares about that.
Oh, I
But it's,
care. I care.
but it, it's similar to like what you might see a fireman or something where, I think some firemen might use, these BG4s, but they typically will use like more of like I think an SCBA, which is like a tank, and it's compressed air, which those last about an hour. So these are larger, but the benefit is that, that's what you're looking at there is something more similar to what a fireman would wear. It's just a big, it looks like a scuba tank.
Right.
That's what a fireman typically would wear, I think. Where what we wear is larger, it's heavier, but what a fireman would wear is going to last maybe an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And we've trained with those a little bit. But what we have will last, 3 or 4 hours and potentially longer, according to what you're doing.
More closer to this one.
That's exactly what we wear right there. That's a Draeger BG4. And, if you're going into a structure fire, you run out of air, you walk outside. I mean, I'm probably making it sound more simple. I'm sure a fireman's not going to appreciate that comment, but, but if you're a mile into a mine and you run out of air, well, you're in trouble if you're in bad air. And so this will allow us to travel, say, an hour or 2 hours into a mine and then back out and still have good breathing air, potentially. So, I mean, with any mine rescue event, you don't just have a bunch of guys just be like, oh, well, there's, people in here, there's a fire, whatever case may be. And just everybody runs in and you've got teams outside, you've got people at what they call a fresh air base. So you sort of go in and establish where's the furthest point that we can get in here that would be a safe fresh air location. And we can get in here as close as possible to whatever problem we have.
Mm-hmm.
And we can have teams and equipment there. And then whoever needs to go in and explore or fight a fire, whatever case may be, they can advance in from this, what we call a fresh air base. And it's just a base. It's just a location. But you would have additional support guys, equipment at that location too.
Who makes those decisions of like, they'll look at a map and say, okay, here's our fresh air base. Is that how it works? Or is there kind of a hierarchy in the group?
When you're looking at like a real mine rescue event, you're talking about having, your state agencies, your regulatory agencies, your federal, you're talking MSHA, state, West Virginia Miners Health Safety and Training, or whatever state you're in. Additionally, you have company officials. So they'll set up what they call a command center. And the command center is just a location where all these decisions are being made. It's sort of a hub of communication, if you will. And beyond talking to the teams and sort of, controlling the movement of the teams. Additionally, they might have to talk to, if it's a big enough event, they may be talking to press or family members. And so, there's a lot of moving parts, the bigger the event gets. But yeah, you've got a group of what is generally very experienced people that are making these decisions on, hey, this is the way we're going to explore. This is where our fresh air base is going to be, and all these big decisions. And then you've got guys underground that are actually in there doing the work.
Oh yeah. And, you have, different teams from everywhere. I think UBB had upwards of 180 some teams.
Yeah. You had teams from all different companies there. That's as big an event as you can imagine in mine rescue. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that.
Yeah.
So,
and people, just finding somewhere to sleep, somewhere to put their sleeping bag or whatever for a solid week. So obviously it's hectic. So with these, for a competition, for instance, what type of challenges are there, or how do they gauge like, oh, well, that team's better than that team? Do they do certain things in a quicker amount of time? Or
yeah, I mean, it's pretty broad. Mine rescue competition can vary. And it's not just one thing. It's not like, hey, when we go do mine rescue competition, this is what we do. We always do this. Different competitions, sort of involve different elements. There's some sort of like problem solving exercises that we do. And, when we go into these like mine rescue problems, which is what we call them, it'll be like a mock field set up in, it could be indoors or outdoors. And there's placards on the ground, which are, just, you can imagine a piece of paper on the ground with a note wrote on it that might say, bad air. And I'm just being, just generalizing it here, but it might give you certain constituents of the air that exist there. It might say, hey, you got missing persons, this location or that location. And then what it becomes is a problem solving drill. And so in every move you make, there's mine rescue rules. Like there's literally a rule book that is every year looked at and changed if there's changes need made. And so every move that you make within this mine rescue problem is judged. There's literally a group of judges that follow you around as you're working through this drill. And they're watching everything you do. Did you make the proper gas test? Did you make the proper roof checks? Do you, when you ventilate, did your air go the right direction? And not only that, it's all timed. So it literally is okay, everybody ready, 3, 2, 1, start the clock. And it's bang, 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 bang. So the teams are scored on, did they do all the right stuff? Or did they screw up somewhere? Mm-hmm. And then beyond that, who was the fastest doing it? If several teams, maybe they went through the problem, 2 or 3 teams made 0 mistakes. Okay. Well, then they're going to look at time. Well, who did it the fastest? Well, there's your winner. Right. Mm-hmm. But in addition to those types of problems, we have like first aid problems, so they'll have a guy's laying there and he'll have little stickers on him that indicate different injuries. He's got a broken leg. He is bleeding in his arm. And so we have to go in and same thing. There's a whole rule book and exactly how we're supposed to approach that. I mean, it's not a lot different from what, a policeman or a fireman might, it's EMR, it's emergency medical response type of training. It's basic first aid. So we might do CPR. There's mannequins set up that we would do CPR. So, and all that again, scored, timed. There's a group of judges watching you do all that. There's another part of the competition where they'll take these breathing apparatuses that we got and they'll put like bad parts in them. They got them set up and they'll put bad parts in them. And then a guy's got to go up there and he's got to figure out what's wrong with this under the clock. They start the clock, 3, 2, 1, go. And he's taking this thing apart. There's a bad part in it, multiple bad parts generally. And they're going through it and finding what's wrong with it, fixing it, and then putting it back together, testing it again. And, so, there's several different categories of competition. And so, we compete in all of those and all that stuff's important to us as a mine rescue team. I mean, if your BG4, if your breathing apparatus breaks on you, if something goes wrong with it, you need a guy there that's going to be able to fix it. And sure. So, if you got a guy hurt and you want a guy that's going to be able to work on that guy and treat him and get him out of the mine.
How many health certifications do you obtain over time? You mentioned you actually teach classes. Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So currently that's probably the biggest part of my job day to day is teaching classes and putting training material together and, all the logistics that go into that. I mean, we're moving stuff from place to place because we train. As a mine rescue team, we train underground miners, surface miners, environmental groups, truck shop groups, processing plant guys. Like we go everywhere and train everybody in just about everything. As far as certifications go, I guess I got just about every certification you could have in mining short of I don't have an electrical certification, but I mean, I'm an underground foreman. I have an EMT card, an EMT instructor, CPR instructor. I'm what they call an MSHA instructor, which means that I'm recognized by the federal government as a instructor for surface underground mining. Just everything. But like we've already been over. I've been doing this a little while. So
man, that's awesome. Have you ever saved anyone's life?
Well, I mean,
I gave it a Heimlich on somebody. Like there's this guy that started choking when I was in Disney World and I was like, I got to do something. Yeah. And I got up and then I just was like, what do I do? And thank goodness he coughed it up before I had to do anything. But that's the only extent of that I've ever ran into. And thankfully, because I wasn't trained to do it and I could have gotten a bad situation.
I think you could have figured it out, JD.
Yeah. I'll just start pitching. Yeah, I'll give him the big Kentucky right there in the restaurant.
That's it, dude. Well, I mean, I guess if you look back, 2018, we had some kids went into a mine where they were adults, but I call them kids, and they were missing and they were lost in there for 5 days, and we were actually able to find them and bring them out. So
was that near Logan? Where was that?
No, that was down closer to Whitesville.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that was definitely we found those. I mean, that was a huge group effort. The state of West Virginia was involved. Our company was involved. But yeah, they were in there for 5 days, with nothing to eat, nothing to drink. They had no light. It was.
How much can you talk about that one? I don't want to get you in trouble. I know a lot of this stuff is like,
I mean, there's not a whole lot to talk about. I mean, we went in and, it was bad air. It's a mine that was abandoned, and, I won't go into why they were in there. I don't know. I didn't ask them.
Sure.
So they were in there and they were missing, and their light went dead. And, we was in there for a few days. It took us a little while to find them because, that's the thing. I think, people have went missing, and it's not just this situation. There's been multiple situations, different companies where people have went into the mine. And let's say that it's very intentional. If you're going into a mine like this, like you didn't just stumble into this coal mine. You didn't, I mean, the walls were broken, and like stuff was beat down with hammers to actually get into this. So, they're in there, and, I mean, they're just lost, man. They don't have light, and, we weren't 100% sure they were even in there. You know what I mean? We don't have no proof. We knew they were in there. There was evidence that somebody had been in there. But we didn't know where they were at. And, I've heard it said, not just this situation, multiple situations where somebody's went missing in a mine, and they've said, why don't they just go in and look for them? Well, that's like saying, why don't you just go to Charleston, or why don't you just go to Pittsburgh and look for them? Well, they could be anywhere. You have to understand, an underground mine, this mine had been in operation for years and years and years. It's an underground city. There's miles and miles and miles and miles of endless mine to go in, and there's no rhyme or reason why they would be here or there. I mean, you're just looking. It's the proverbial needle in a haystack. I mean, we have no idea, but
I mean, like a beehive, like it's just like, you go a mile this way and then you turn and there's a mile that way. And then you gotta,
and a mine that's not active, like this mine, conveyor belts and infrastructure that's in place in an active mine may lead you out, where a mine like this, everything looks the same. I mean, you go in and every turn you make, it all looks exactly the same. So to walk into one of these mines and get lost would be the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And so, but they were in there for 5 days.
Man, that's incredible. They were still alive.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. I mean,
it's terrifying that they were in there and not even knowing if anybody was looking for them. I mean, you just imagine being in the pitch black. Like, I can't exaggerate the darkness of a coal mine. Like before I walked into a coal mine, I had never seen true darkness. It's pitch black. There's no source of light in there. None. I mean, when people say, "Oh, you can't see your hand in front of your face," you could hold your hand against your face. There's no change in anything. It's complete black. And to be in that and just, I mean, that's pretty terrifying.
They sat there for days, just like
5 days
talking to each other.
Yeah, 5 days. Yeah.
Wow.
Who knows what they were doing? I mean,
yeah.
I guess you get bored pretty quick.
Yeah. Oh man.
There's no phone service in there. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Well, and two, I think a lot of times, like in these low oxygen environments, a lot of people, if they're in there to do something they shouldn't be doing, which most likely they are, typically they go in to steal copper, steal different things. Eventually, like when they run out of oxygen, they just kind of disorient and then wander off into infinity. So just them having the amount of oxygen in the air.
Right. Yeah. And that's I mean, that's an element that people don't even consider. I mean, you know, the air, a mine that's not active is not ventilated. And so the oxygen level, you know, ambient air, which is the air that we're in right now, is 20.8 by volume % oxygen. Well, there was areas in that mine that was 10% oxygen. You know, you're talking about half of the oxygen that you're sitting, like you can't survive in that very long. And it varied. And that's the reason that they did survive, is because it was anywhere from 10 to 17, 18% oxygen in there. So, you know, they did survive, fortunately, but you know, that's not an environment you want to go in.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, I mean, after it took us, you know, like I said, I mean, we're looking within a city for, you know, these people, and it took us, we started looking Sunday and it was Wednesday before we actually found them. And they thought they'd been in there for weeks, because they were like, because you would imagine there's no night or day. There's no telling of time once you're in there. I mean, and so, you know, we're coming out, and it was about December, I want to say 16th, 17th, something like that, maybe 18th of 2018. And they thought they had missed Christmas.
Oh, wow.
Because they thought they had been in there for multiple weeks. And I was like, how long do you think you've been in here? They're like, because they were talking about how I'm so sad that we missed Christmas. And I was like, you haven't missed Christmas. How long do you think you've been in here? They've been in there 5 days. They thought they'd been in there for weeks. So, you know, when they say time flies when you're having fun, well, that's the opposite.
Right.
I don't know how slow time can go, but I'm sure it was going about as slow as possible.
Man, that's terrifying. So was you on the group that, like, you know, you flashed your light and there they are?
Mm-hmm.
You was okay. So you saw them, like, and they were like, you know, like,
yes,
deers in the headlights.
That's very close depiction of what I saw.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is amazing. It's because originally I started on a project, and I'll say his name. I know Lois wouldn't care, but the Epperly family in southern West Virginia lost Clay Epperly in a mine in Keystone. And essentially what it sounded like happened is they were all under there. He was down there with a few other people, and the oxygen got low and he wandered off, and they were never able to find him. And the problem there, and they ended up having to seal the mine. It's a very sad story.
Right. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tragic.
Yeah. And Lois, I talked to them for a long time, and she will never be the same, sure, obviously, over something like that. But what they were having trouble with is the mine was so old when they started reintroducing air to ventilate, that the mine started kind of deteriorating from the fresh air.
Right. Yeah. The roof and the ribs, the what we call the rib is the walls, you know, and the roof. And when air hits that stuff, it just starts breaking apart.
Is that kind of what you're looking for? Like when you're walking, what are the signs of, like, okay, well, we need to turn around? Typically.
I'm not sure. I mean, you know, in a situation where, like, when we were looking for them, you know, you're looking out to make sure you're not going to get hurt. But yeah, I mean, it's bad. It's, you know, it's not a maintained mine. You know what I'm saying? So this isn't, you know, if there was a bad area of bad roof or bad rib, you try not to go into it, but it's, you know, don't go into a mine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? These teams are the teams were going in there and looking for these guys. And, you know, it does eventually, and potentially could be a situation where nobody can reach you. Like that's the sort of the situation. And I'm sure with this, I don't know the details of that. I've heard about the Keystone situation, but I don't know the details of it. But yeah, it for sure can get to a point where it's like, oh, this isn't, we can't go in there. Like,
sure.
It becomes at a certain point a suicide mission,
that's kind of what it was sounding like. But also too, it's important to talk about the resources that goes into these operations. I mean, probably for his hundreds of thousands of dollars. It wouldn't.
Oh,
it would not surprise me because they had so many people up there for so many days, and
probably
then
millions.
Yeah.
I mean, because just like with St. Creek, we had to cut an entire new road in to get to the side where they were going in. So and you're talking about an entire agency. The West Virginia State, I'm sure, is involved, and so, there's a huge number of people that are involved in equipment and resources and money that goes into, but yeah, man, I mean, that's the reality.
So good on y'all for doing, I mean, that's pretty incredible. That I would bet to say that like that hasn't happened too much. There haven't been too many people spend time 5 days in a coal mine and be able to come out.
No.
So yeah, that's pretty insane. All right. So we kind of walked through mine rescue. I saw something that I never knew that I thought would be cool to talk about. I didn't realize you were a preacher.
I'm not.
You're not. Someone said you were. Okay.
No, I mean, I go to church and
okay. So someone said, and a preacher. Okay, well, I have to cut that out. But
that's all right. You leave it in.
No. Someone.
I
said
mean,
that.
I've done a little bit of preaching in the past, but yeah, no, me and my family go to Faith Community in here in town, but no, I'm not doing any preaching.
Well, I was gonna say your resume is so long. Like one of these things can't be, can't be true. But I know, like, you have a real leadership presence because when I filmed for a day. For UBB, a coal miner story at CrossFit Coal,
sure.
And then just seeing the community and you kind of led in a prayer and all this stuff is really nice. It was just a really cool environment. So if someone out there in the Beckley area is looking for a CrossFit gym, I mean, I don't really think you'll find any better choice than CrossFit Coal.
No, it's awesome. Yeah, it's a great bunch. I mean, don't watch CrossFit on TV and think that that's what we're doing. I mean, we do actually have a boy there that is in the CrossFit games. He competed last year in the games. And, I mean, this kid is an absolute animal, Austin Hatfield. And,
dude.
Yeah. I mean, it's, he's there, but then, there's people like me and, just your average guys and ladies and soccer moms and just, normal people. I mean, this kid is a world-class athlete and he's there doing his workouts and none of us are doing what he's doing, but,
so he still goes there?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. He's great. He's a good kid, but, super talented. And, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people here in town, like, CrossFit's sort of a nuanced sport. People don't know about it, but I mean, this kid is a professional athlete right here in town. I mean, he's as talented as any, it's wild watching him do what he does, man. He is a phenom for sure. But, we're not doing what he's doing. We're just,
Well, yeah. So you have all experience levels. Like you have people just 100%. Now starting out.
Yeah, dude. There's people walk into the gym and sign up that have never grabbed a barbell in their life and have never really been in a gym at all. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, when I say every fitness level, there's every fitness level from day one to this kid that is a professional athlete.
Yeah.
So,
and all the trainers are certified. Like you have, like modifiers for people beginning. For
every class has a coach. So you're not just walking in there and there's, a workout on the board and you have to figure it out. There's somebody there for every class. You walk in, There's somebody that's going to go over a warm up. They're going to tell you exactly what the movements look like. If you can't do a movement, they'll give you some options for how you can modify that movement. You can do something else. If you can't do something in the workout, they're going to give you something that you can do. So it's approachable for sure. Like I think people see it on TV or they watch the CrossFit games or they just have certain perceived ideas about what CrossFit is. And it's just a gym, man. And it's just very, very regular people other than Austin.
Yeah.
Do work.
I mean, yeah, that's not typical.
Yeah, no, it's not, but we had a young girl that came there too, Chloe Honecker, that came there, and she made it to the games as a teenager. And so, we've had some pretty amazing athletes that she still comes. She's in college now, but she still comes sometimes. She's real good friends with my oldest daughter, but most of us are just regular humans, man.
But you're not too regular, Dave, I gotta say. No. But and shout out to Chris Rhodes. He's a buddy of mine.
Oh yeah, Chris is great.
Yeah, I've known him for years and years and years.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little photography too, and we still have drumming to cover. I mean, just get comfortable. But so it sounds like you were self-taught in this, like I was.
Yeah.
So did you just start YouTubing, like, okay, how to do this, how to do that?
Yeah, pretty much, man. There was a guy that used to come to the gym named Aaron Buchanan, and he did landscape photography, and I followed him on Instagram, and his photos were so good. I didn't know that he was taking the pictures. I thought he just was I'm like, this guy just likes epic scenery and was sharing these pictures. And one day, I guess I probably never read the caption, so I read this caption, and he had these pictures of the Milky Way core. It was sort of very similar to the stuff I do now. And so the next time I see him at the gym, I'm like, dude, how do you do this? I had a DSLR Canon Rebel that everybody in the world has at home, and I'm like, is this something I can do? And he basically gives me a rundown. You need a tripod, wide angle lens. This is kind of what your settings are going to look like. And, hey man, first clear night I had, I'm out on the side of the road somewhere with a tripod, and from there, just become an obsession. And like you said, self-taught YouTube videos and a lot of trial and error, honestly. Because especially like with some of the like deep space stuff that I'm taking pictures of and aligning that with like the foreground and stuff, there's really not a lot of resources out there talking about that. Like you can get on YouTube and look it up, but I'm not saying there's on a worldwide scale, there's tons of people doing it. Right. On a local scale or on a YouTube, the people on YouTube, there's not a lot of people talking about how to plan for a shot like that. I mean, there's a few. And so, those resources become pretty important to you. But a lot of trial and error. And a lot more error in the beginning, but it's irons out with time. But, at this point, I've been doing, I'll say astrophotography. I'm using that loosely. I've been doing it for over 5 years now. So, I would like to think I've gotten a little bit better at it, but
oh dude, it's incredible. And you can see your following is really growing, and you're really good at compositing too. Cause like you mentioned, you're not looking at one photo. You're looking at a bunch of photos.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like the photo you're looking at there that's 180 degrees. The left side of the picture is north and the right side of the picture is south.
Mm.
So, there is about 8 frames across that picture. So literally you can imagine you point your camera north and you take one picture, and then you move it so many degrees, you take another picture and you move it all the way around until you're pointing south. And then you have to stitch all that together.
Mm-hmm.
And then additionally, the foreground or the ground those are different pictures because they have to be exposed differently than the sky.
Sure.
So,
cause the sky's, well, I don't know about this time, but it's brighter than the land. Is that correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It always is. Right. Yeah. So And what a lot of times there's a lot of different techniques in shooting the ground or the foreground, as we call it. A lot of times I'm shooting the foreground before it gets completely dark. I mean, like you can see in this picture, if you look at it, it looks almost daytime, but if you see I'm holding the light in my hand, so it's like dark enough that the light's still lighting the ground up around me. And that's real. I've not, manipulated that in any kind of way. But it's a lot easier to get a lot of the foreground details if you shoot while you still have a little bit of residual light.
Gotcha.
But yeah, and then the sky is, and we're going deep in it here.
Heck
but
yeah.
The sky is tracked, so the stars from our perspective move.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm taking anywhere from 1 minute to 3 minute long exposures of the sky. Well, if you just did that from a tripod, then the stars would look like streaks. Okay, so this mount that I have, it just mounts on top of a tripod and it moves with the stars.
So you got the motorized, is it an Edelkrone?
It's the one I'm using is I have a couple, but the one I use the most is called a Star Adventurer.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, and it's it's about this big. It's just got gears in it, and you just it'll fit in the palm of your hand for you listeners, but it's it just mounts on the top of a tripod, and then you mount the camera to it. And without going into all the details of how to set it up, it does have to be set up a certain way, but you set it up and then you can point it anywhere and it'll follow the stars. So you can shoot 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute, potentially long exposures.
So you set your camera, do you set your camera through it too? Or is it kind of?
Yeah. The whole camera and lens, everything mounts on top of that tracker. And so the tracker's on, it's moving. I mean, if you were looking at it here and it was on, it wouldn't look like it was moving, but over the course, it's moving very slowly. But the same thing with the stars. You look up the stars, they don't look like they're moving if you're staring at them. But like that's the perfect example of the stars moving. That's facing directly north. They're moving. But you could, if this is shot from a static tripod, okay. And so, what I'm trying to get with this picture is the movement of the stars.
How many hours?
I think maybe about 3, something like that.
So it was was it a 3 hour exposure, or is it like you?
This is 3 hours of 30-second exposure. Gotcha. Yeah. Like I just posted a video of the lunar eclipse, and it was, I think I had 2 cameras running. I shot about 2,000 pictures with each camera. So one was on a static tripod and I'm shooting shorter exposures, but the other one, it was set up to like aperture priority. I know you're a camera nerd, so you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So it's adjusting shutter speed, but it was on the tracker. So it didn't matter if it shot at 1/100th of a second or 10-second long exposure. It was following the moon. So for you guys that see that, video, that camera's on a tracker. So it's following the moon the whole time. And so as the eclipse happened, the moon is getting darker, right? And so the exposure needed adjusted. Well, I was in bed. So I set everything up. Once the eclipse started, I started it and made a couple little tweaks, and then I had to work the next day. So I shot it from my roof. So I just let it go and I went to bed. And then when I got up, it was like, I got 4,000 pictures. I didn't have to work too hard for that, but you gotta know the operation of the camera, and then, you sort of go to bed and come back the next morning and grab it off the rooftop.
That's awesome. So there's a little bit of math involved. Kind of, sort of. I mean, it's kind of like, well, I know that this star is going to move this length of time. Or is it more testing of like, I wonder what a 30-second exposure would look like?
Well, it's like I said, trial and error. With something like the Milky Way core or something like that, 2-minute exposures work pretty good, even 1 minute exposure. But like, if you're just using if you're trying to get into this, if you're looking at my work and you're like, hey man, I want to do this, don't run out necessarily and go buy a tracker, because you sort of need to have some understanding of the basics of it. That can complicate it to the point where you're like, I just don't want to do this.
Too much.
Yeah. The easy way to do this is a wide angle lens, a camera, and a tripod. And I mean, you can do 20-second exposures, and you can take pictures of the Milky Way core.
Certain camera or lens, like a mirrorless camera over.
Doesn't matter. I used an old Canon Rebel forever. It was like, that was my first camera. But now I use, everything. I still have an old Canon Rebel that I'll use sometimes, but, I have Canon 6D, I have some Sonys, I have, but, now I'm using Astro modified cameras, which just means that the infrared filters have been removed. And so you see all this red stuff in the sky. A normal camera just won't pick that stuff up.
Right.
And the reason for that is, if you remember back in the day when you took a picture of somebody, they would have like red eyes. Well, they started putting these filters that filters out like some of the infrared and stuff. Well, that also filters out the stuff in outer space. So an Astro modified camera, which sounds a lot more complicated than it is just a camera with those filters removed. If you have that done, then you probably aren't going to want to go take pictures of your kids with that camera, because the white balance will be completely messed up. It looks crazy. But like for me, I'm not going out and taking portrait sessions with an Astro modified camera. I'm taking a picture of the sky, and then I can correct all the color later.
Sure.
If it's all shot in RAW, but yeah, and you say, well, okay, if I can do it with a 20-second exposure from a tripod, then why then are you using a tracker and Astro modified cameras and, all these light pollution filters? Why go? Well, you just don't see all that detail. It just gets better. You got to think there's always movement with the stars. So even if you shoot a 20-second exposure, zoomed out, it looks fine. But when you zoom in, you'll see that the stars aren't
blurry.
Pinpoint. They're little tiny lines.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so, the details of the stuff in space become much more crisp with a tracked sky like that. Like if you zoom in on those stars, they're dots, they're not lines. So
that's important. That's awesome. So what kind of budget are we thinking? If you've inspired somebody, like there's a underground coal miner out there, it's like, you know what, I want to do this too. How much?
There's not going to be too many underground coal miners.
You never know.
Specifically, there might be some. We'll see. I hope so. Another nerd I can talk to at work.
Oh yeah, man. And there was mainly like the creativity on our mind. There's a lot of musicians and stuff like that.
Sure.
When I started wanting to make a zombie movie, they were like, okay, that's a little weird,
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's the same with you. They were always so motivating for me. They're like, I heard you're not supposed to be here so much, in the best way possible.
Yeah, no, I understand.
They would just, kind of cheer for me.
Yeah, man.
And it's pretty cool. And they still do.
Yeah, man. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm cheering for you.
Yeah. Hey, I'm cheering for you. I mean, it's, and you've been able to turn this into a business. Like your work is sought after, which is really, really cool. And I think the backstory of it really helps sell it too. Cause it's like, you'll buy a handmade bowl, not necessarily for how it looks, but the story behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, in talking about that was the furthest thing from my mind ever. And, how that even become about was just like, I'm posting pictures to my Facebook. I mean, it's just like, these are just the pictures I take. My friends will think they're cool or whatever. And then, initially it was, my friends, it was friends and family, and people supported me and was like, hey man, I'd like a print of that picture that you just posted. And I'm like, I remember early on being like, I don't even know, like, what, I just go to Walmart or what? I don't even know, like, how do I even do this? You know what I mean?
Yep.
And, eventually, it sort of become a thing that, the work had become supportive of itself. And so, I was able to buy new gear and new lenses, and it just improved. And that's, I'm not, I'm making enough that it supports itself and it keeps it alive. And that's what I want. You know what I mean? Like it's a hobby. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if it grows beyond that, I guess that, at some point it's okay, but I'm completely cool with this being, a hobby and doing it on the weekend. I mean, it's fun, man. If nobody ever liked it and nobody ever bought a print and nobody ever was interested and commented on my post online, that would be perfectly okay. But I would still do it because I just like doing it.
It seems like things tend to work that have that kind of mentality behind it. Because when you start saying, like, I know for me, when you start turning it into a job, it's like, oh, that's kind of lame.
Well, if the grind is just, if you're just involved in the grind just for the outcome, then you might not ever see the outcome. But if you just love the grind, man, then it's just whatever comes of it, comes of it. Like that's what I'm saying. Like I'm on my roof taking 4,000 pictures of the moon. Yeah, I did sleep through some of it, but I still had to get up and, do the whole thing. Like I'm not doing that. I just love it, man. Yeah. And beyond me loving it, I love to show other people. Like, dude, like most people's not going to get up and stare at the moon for 3 hours and watch it. You know what I mean? And so how cool is it to be able to like document that and people get to watch? Like, this is the coolest thing in the world, to me, because I love outer space and obviously other people do too, yeah, man, it's just fun, man. You know what I mean? And I love to see other people get involved in it. And going back to your question of like, what's a good starting point? Hey man, a wide angle lens, you're talking something like if you got like, how many people have an old Canon Rebel at home? You know what I mean? Or an old Nikon or something, and a kit lens, the lens that it came with. I mean, typically those lenses are like 18 to 55 millimeter lens, the little wide angle lens that they come with.
Like the 4 aperture won't hurt you. Like
it's not great, but it'll work.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like me and my buddy were in Tennessee here a couple weekends ago, and he just bought a Canon Rebel. It's a T4i. I mean, God, when did that thing come out? Forever ago. And a kit lens. I mean, it's the lens that it came, that camera come in a box with in 2010 or whenever it come out.
Yep.
And I was like, dude, we're going to take a picture of the Milky Way with this thing. And he's like, I'm like, yeah, dude. And we did, you know what I mean? And it'll do it. We set it up on a tripod, and I was like, point it over this direction and we'll set it to like a 20-second exposure. Take your F number as low as it'll go and set your ISO to 3200. And dude, he snaps his shot. And, we can sort of see the Milky Way faintly in the sky, but he snaps his shot and it's like, bang.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And he's just like,
light up like, oh.
Yeah. He's like, oh my God. Yeah, it's so cool, man.
That's
he
awesome.
He posted to Facebook and it was awesome. Yeah, it was actually my boss, Jimmy Rednick, but it was, it was exciting, dude.
Do you have a process? I imagine part of it is the hanging out. Like, you just go and you're like, I'm going to listen to some music, or I'm going to like, I don't know, start a fire, or do you have like a process at different places? Or
man, a lot of times just with my schedule and stuff, a lot of times it's like get there and go to work. I mean, it's cool when I do have some time that I can go and just, hike and hang out and, but I've usually researched, and I know exactly what time I need to shoot. I know exactly what direction I'm going to be pointed in. I sort of know all the ins and outs, all the details before I even get there. I know I'll even sketch out what the picture is going to look like before I even get there.
Oh, wow.
And I'll have like notes on, at such and such time, I need to be pointed at 275 degrees, west or whatever. And then, at such and such time, I'll flip over to whatever field. Like the whole process is pretty well planned. And so, Yeah, sometimes I have time. Like if I go to Dolly Sods, maybe I can spend a day and a half or whatever, and I'll go hike a little bit and hang out, and that's cool. But it's usually go and do the work and get back.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's the actual shoot itself, as funny as this may sound, is pretty stressful sometimes.
Right.
Because it
makes sense.
It's like that, once I go and I've got the shots, it's like, okay, now piecing them together, that's sort of the fun part when you see it all come to life. But yeah, it's, sometimes I still get a little stressed out even after years of doing it. I'm just like, oh man, am I going to be able to nail focus and this and this and this? And it's this, you have this opportunity to get, because the night sky changes, all year. So the night sky's something different every night.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, different times of the year, it's kind of funny because a lot of people look at the year as like, okay, this is wintertime. It's cold in the winter. And this is summertime. It's warm. And this is springtime. But for me, it's like, oh, this is wintertime. This is the time when Orion is in the sky. Or this is summertime. This is when the Milky Way core is in the sky. And so, for me, it's like the seasons have been defined by what's in the night sky.
Yeah. Yeah. That's comforting to hear because it's like with making movies too. Like I love when I'm done.
Yeah. I understand.
I want to sit there. I want to be able to enjoy it so much, but also I feel the pressure from somewhere. I don't know why, but
it's yourself. You're self-motivated. Yeah.
You're just
for
like,
sure.
I want this to be great. And then if it's not, the world's going to end. And people are going to be so upset. I don't know where all that comes
and
from.
then, too, it probably, once you get out there and you get the footage that you need, that's a relief within itself. You can come back. The editing process is like, hey, I can do this. You know what I mean? Like this is, if I screw it up, I can go back and fix it later or whatever. But it's like when you're on the shoot, it's like, this needs to be right.
Yep.
While I'm here. And it's so, it does get a bit stressful.
Yep. I'm trying to find a video of you playing drums because that's my next topic. I got two more topics.
All right.
So when did you what's your YouTube channel first off?
Look up Dave Has a Camera.
Dave Has a Camera.
I'm not on YouTube a whole lot.
Right.
But you could probably find it. That's the name of my channel. So,
okay, let's see. Dave Has a Camera.
If you go to my Facebook.
Okay. Yep. Let's do that. Cause I was sitting there and I was like, I saw this video or this post from you on Facebook that said, I
go to videos.
Gojira.
Go to videos there, yeah.
Playing this Gojira song. And I'm like, wait a minute, I love Gojira. What is this?
Might have went.
Here's one. Pantera.
Yeah, that's some good. Yeah.
All right, so let's check this. Well, I probably can't play that. Do you play the music behind? Track?
It's all got music on it. So yeah,
we can listen to a little bit of it here anyway. Oh, let me see here. I done turned the volume off. There we go. So my dude is multi-skilled in so many ways. I don't think we'll get pulled for that little bit, but you can hear like Dave's got some skills. So when did you first pick up the drumsticks? When did this happen?
Oh man, pretty young. Yeah. I got a lot of family members that are musicians. My grandpa was a big banjo player. And I remember as a kid, he tried to get me to play banjo. I'm talking like 8, 9 years old, probably younger than that actually. And I would take the banjo. Yeah, banjo essentially has a drum head on it. And I would take the banjo and just be in there just beating like it was a drum. But my brother ended up picking up the banjo and is an absolute phenom on the banjo.
That's what I heard. What's it called?
Strings of Green.
Strings of
him
Green.
And his sons. And he ended up picking up the banjo and then I ended up playing drums. And so Yeah, I've been playing drums since I was probably, I don't know, 10 or 11. My grandpa was a pastor of a little church, and they had an old beat up set of drums in there. And I was just like, Grandpa, you care if I, play these drums, and I'm just like up there banging away, they're singing hymns, and I'm just not probably playing music at all, but that's kind of how it all began. So.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. Someone said, "Man, dude, his brother play the crap out of a banjo."
Yeah. He's a talented guy, and his boys are all really good. That's one of his sons.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Look at the finger movement.
Oh yeah. They're tough. Yeah. They're great. Yeah.
Well, we got to play a little bit of this. So are they mainly like, they're
local.
Are they bluegrass or, okay. So this is.
Yeah. They're bluegrass.
Obviously.
Yeah. Now, my brother is very talented, not quite as good looking as I am, but he does have a lot more hair.
Man, if there's one instrument I would pick to play, it'd be this one.
Oh, yeah. He's tough, man. Very talented guy.
Oh, he wrote this.
I'm not sure.
It says, here's a tune I wrote probably 18 years ago named Promise Messiah.
There you go.
Wow, dude.
Oh, he's incredible. Yeah, he really is. He's tough.
That's great.
Yeah.
So much talent in this family. All right. So I talked about this one story. So I called you a year ago and I said, you know what? This will be the podcast that we never got to do with Theo Vaughn. Because I called you out of nowhere. I don't know. We probably ain't talked in a year. I'm like, hey, dude, do you like Theo Vaughn? And you're like, dude, I love Theo Vaughn.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I said, perfect. So for those who don't, well, I mean, no one knows. I'm just going to put it out there because, might as well. But producer of this past weekend, I was going back and forth on potentially being on the show and talking about coal mining.
Yeah.
And I was the surface end of things. And so they get a hold of me. We go back and forth. We do a Zoom call, which went really great. He even went over the 40-minute time limit, and we restarted another one. Went great. And then he reached back out. He said, hey, do you know any underground coal miners that are like active? And I instantly thought of you. So I reach out to you, and you're like, yeah, man, I'll try. And then so you get the Zoom call.
Right.
And we never heard anything.
Crickets, bro. Let's go, Theo. We're ready, bro. Let's go.
So that's kind of how this. I was like, Dave, let's do an episode because this may be the episode that never existed, but it's okay.
This is as close as we get to Theo, maybe.
I know. Yeah, I still have faith though.
Yeah, yeah.
If I'm gonna send this,
I'm holding out hope.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm like I'm like a crazy ex-girlfriend at this point. I'll send like a random email like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
I'll probably send them this and be like, hey, just checking in.
Just FYI, we're still around, bro. Still around. Hey, if you want us on the show.
Oh man. But even still, I'm glad we finally got to but yeah, basically Theo does and I'm sure most of the audience knows who Theo Vaughn is, but they do episodes with like blue collar workers. Like they'll have they did one on a trash man. They did one on like a police detective.
Yeah.
Bunch of different things. So I was trying to pitch and get us on as the coal miners.
Yeah.
But maybe one day.
Yeah. You actually, when you called me, you're like, hey man, I got this opportunity to do this podcast. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm kind of like, okay, cool. You were like, have you ever heard of this past week? I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? Like, yeah.
Oh man. Oh, I love Theo is a he's a gift
Oh, dude, he is. He's
to
awesome.
society. Yeah. So
he's
we're
great.
still holding out hope.
Yeah,
if you're
man.
listening, it'd be a great episode. We'd be great
Yeah.
representatives.
Yeah, we would. Yeah.
Even if it's just Dave. Bring Dave on, because I'm technically retired miner now. But
No, it'd be even better with both of us.
yeah, it'd be good. But anyways, all right, Dave. I think we have fully examined everything we can possibly
Hey, man,
do.
it's been good.
How can people find you? Like, where can they find your photography work? Get in touch, all that good stuff.
I don't think it's too hard. Probably if you just Google Dave has a camera, my portfolio will come up. My Facebook is just my Facebook page, but it's, I've got I guess somewhat significant following on there. I'm Dave has a camera on Instagram. I'm Dave has a camera on TikTok. Like I said, my website portfolio is Dave has a camera. It has links to my Facebook and stuff on there too.
You take commissions, like, hey, can you go shoot this for me?
I have, yeah. I mean, this is the type of stuff I'm known for, nighttime, landscape photography, but, I've done a little bit of everything from, commission photos for businesses and senior pictures and, stuff. One thing I really don't do is weddings. But other than that, I've done I have done a few weddings very reluctantly, but it's just not my jam. If you want a wedding photographer, hire a wedding photographer, don't hire me. But but I've done a little bit of everything over the years, but yeah.
Awesome.
This is primarily the nighttime landscape stuff is my jam.
Oh yeah, I've shot my batch of wedding videos. So, man, you talk about stress.
Yeah, exactly. We're going back to talking about stressful shoots. Yeah, I just don't. That's not something.
You got to get everything that point in time.
Yeah, that's
it's
right.
Never happening again. This
it might happen again. It'll be with somebody else.
Yes. Now, dude, I've gotten inquiries of people who've gotten divorced and remarried, and I shot their first wedding.
Yeah, hey, can you come back? Bro? Yeah. Round two.
I wear that as a badge of honor, so that's great. Awesome. Well, everyone else out there, thank you for joining us. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to Creepalachia on YouTube. Be sure to check out the podcast. If you're listening to it on Apple or Spotify, leave a review. Takes no time at all and really helps the show get found. And also we have Facebook and TikTok, and the Facebook community is continuously growing. A lot of fun stuff there. And above all else, everyone, please remember, never forget, long live Appalachia.